Hello. I have not been on here in a long time. And I'll share a couple reasons. One, I'm pretty much taking a big old digital break. And two, my yoga teacher, hey Kristen, my yoga teacher died last week. And so I didn't go quiet to withdraw, but I went quiet to reflect on what that really means. Hey Terry. But while I was being quiet last week, in this context, I was having a lot of stuff up here that was just really firing, and I took a bunch of notes to share with you because this is really, really good stuff. So, virtual hands raised, who here feels like they go through massive swings of depression and wondering if it's all worth it, not in a suicidal way, but in that really like intelligent existential way of like, what's the point of life? Like, why even bother? And then we swing back to like massive action and huge mission and feeling like we're really heartfelt and we can create lots of things, right? And those feel like the only two options, either like full gun going or total existential depression. Why bother, right? And I've worked on this with my coach because it drives me crazy that's the swing that I go through. And I had a real awakening on it last week when I was doing a couple things. One, thinking about the passing of my own yoga teacher and what that means. What does it mean to interact with somebody? Yeah, thanks, Terry. Hello, hands up. What does it mean to lose somebody in the physical, particularly when your relationship wasn't necessarily physical to start with, meaning it wasn't about interaction in time and space, but it was about deeper truths and lessons and sort of more psychic's the wrong word, but that type of guidance, And then the other part was I was listening to, I'm going to blank on his name, the guy who wrote Power versus Force, Dr. David Hawkins. Yes. Dr. David Hawkins. Hey, Natalie. And I was listening to his book, and he just mentioned, somebody said, can I sit here in a moment of silence with you? So, of course, what did he do? He talked it over, and he was like, why do you need silence? Silence is always there. That's the only way you can hear the sound. And I was like, of course. Now we're in the realm of consciousness, expansion, and existential crisis. So this conversation is specifically directed at intelligent people, and if you've signed up for it, well done. You are an intelligent person. So let's be real. As we expand our own concept of inner joy, as we expand our own imagination of what's possible for ourselves, as we expand to just seeing more and more and more of the good stuff, we naturally see more and more and more of the other stuff, right? So I mentioned this briefly in a Facebook post, if you saw it, about the sky. Like, if the stars are the shining light of joy, then the backdrop upon which we see them is the other thing. It's the sadness. It's the depth. It's the pain, and they're in relief to each other. That's why the stars are so bright. It's because they're in relief. And that's why joys are so joyful. They're in relief to another alternative. So when we go to expand our own emotional self, but also expand our awareness of what's possible for ourselves and ways of being in the world, we naturally expand into the relief as well. And Brene Brown talks about this in the context of you can't, I wrote it down so I wouldn't lose the phrase, you can't selectively numb emotions. And she's talking about it in the terms of, well, if you're trying to keep down shame, you're also keeping down joy. But you also can't selectively numb awareness, meaning that, or you can't selectively highlight emotions either, right? So we can't just have the joy without being also more aware of more pain. We're expanding. That's the point. It's expanding consciousness. It's expanding awareness. It's expanding your literal sight and your feelings, like all of those, sight on every level. And when we do that, we can't help but see more of the abyss because that's where it's in relief to the joy and the expansion. So going back to this concept of we don't have noise without silence, right? So everything is held by an emptiness. And that emptiness can be quite scary. That emptiness can feel shaky, because we don't know where it ends, and we don't know what we do there, and we don't know if it's going to consume us. Here's where we get into feelings like depression. right? The pure existential crises side of what's the point. Because we know as we expand our consciousness that we become more and more aware of the abyss, and the abyss doesn't mean anything, right? So if consciousness is telling me, oh, I have a calling and I have a connection and I can be inherently networked with other people, and just by the very fact of my expansion support other people, then the opposite of that is, this is pointless, this is worthless, I do nothing here. And so we become more aware of both. Right? And again, hands up if you felt this. You don't have to show me, but like, come on, right? We felt this on some level, particularly if you're in this work of wanting to expand yourself in a way that truly brings forward a soul gift in the world. That means that we're also aware that soul gifts don't matter, right? You know, that like life is inherently meaningful and completely meaningless. They go together. So what I've noticed, and what I was working on with my coach, particularly a few months ago, was that every time I'm right at the edge of another up level in my consciousness and awareness, and more importantly than that, surrendering into allowing more gift to come through, more of being present in myself in order to help others, I get this massive upsurge of existential crisis and pretty deep depression. Because I'm seeing the abyss. So what does this mean, right? Like, what does this mean? It means A, you're normal. In case you wondered, you're not like swinging all over the place. We don't need to label it as bipolar or any of that. Seeing the polarity is part of the process, and that unfortunately is the bane of someone with open eyes, metaphorically and physical. It's the bane of someone with an open mind, is that we're seeing all of it. But then we have to use our free will. We have to use the human component of us to make a really clear decision. And the decision is to do it anyway, right? So if there's light and then there's the shadow that we were able to see the light, that doesn't mean wallow in the shadow, right? That means emphasize the light. And we can emphasize the light by experiencing our own pain. We can emphasize the light by acknowledging our own fears. We can emphasize the light by meeting people in a space of, I'm not sure. Because that's where a lot of people are, right? This space between like, oh, I know it's possible, but I'm also afraid. So we don't have to ignore the shadow, because the shadow is what makes the work beautiful. The shadow is what makes joy happy, you know? It's what gives us the upward spike. So we make the decision to do it anyway. And I want to be really clear is that you're doing it because it is your job. And by job, I mean your dharma, your duty. But it's more than like, okay, this is my vocation, I have to do it because it's that kind of job. No, I mean like it is your role as a human. It is your duty based on what you've taken on in this life. If you can feel and understand this conversation, then you are in that circle. And this is your job. Because yes, people are suffering. Yes, people are homeless and in poverty and in war and in lots of awful situations, but you are not one of them. Not this life, not right now. And that means that saying like, yes, but these people are here, great, they are there, I get that, but you can't help them by holding yourself back. You can't help them by staying in the twilight space between shadow and light. You can't. Because what you're saying is, well, but I should be in the shadow. You're saying I am guilty because I shouldn't be here. But guess what? You are. So now it's your dharma. Now it's your sacred duty. I mean, and I mean this really, really seriously. Really seriously. You don't deny the gifts that you're given and who you are, because you are now, in Abraham Hicks terms, the leading edge of consciousness. And everybody's the leading edge of consciousness in their own way, but you're the leading edge of consciousness at the highest level for humanity, which means your evolution, your expansion lifts everyone up. And that is your job. Quite literally, it's your job. Like the best way that you can help people suffering at the lowest level is to raise everyone up. And you raise everyone up by deepening your own way of being in the world, by opening yourself to more connection, more expansion. Like, could you push the limits on what's possible? And once you learn how to push the limits on what's possible for yourself, you can push the limits on what's possible for the world. That's how you serve. So I get that there's this holding back, that there's this, yeah, but what's the point? But this is asking a lot of me, and look at all of this darkness down here. Like, I get that. And it feels a lot like depression. I'm just moving my notes to make sure I captured everything. It feels a lot like depression. It feels a lot like swinging between ups and downs. It feels a lot like, why bother? You know, but why bother? We bother because that's the door you're at. You know, like, you didn't get to pick your door. Here you are. Or even if you did pick your door, it doesn't matter. You are here right now. Your literal duty is to open that door and take the rest of us with you. And as we go into expanded states of awareness, we are going to expand into states of awareness that allow us to be in more pain as well, and to witness more depth of shadow than we knew existed, right? We might have to hold space for people who are in a place that we can't comprehend. But on one level, on an emotional level, on a consciousness level, you get it because by being up here, you've inherently created roots down here. So you can hold the span. And that's what you're being asked to do. You're being asked to understand that pain, understand that fear, understand that what I call the shaky unknowingness, right? Like, when we think about the fact that nothing exists, like, it's possible nothing exists. It's possible you're not here. It's possible all of this is pointless. It's possible it's one giant game, which is the trap that I get in my mind. Like, what's the point? We're all doing it just to keep humans busy while we're here, and we don't really need to be kept busy, but here I feel like I have to keep spinning, and the only reason we have jobs and governments and careers and money and all of that is just to buy time and keep us busy and, like, give us something to do because we're uncomfortable with the fact that we don't have to do anything. And, like, I go to that place, right? And then I don't want to do anything because I'm like, what's the point? What's the point? But the point is that was the zooming out. That is the zooming out. And that zooming out you're going to see all of the questioning as well. But that makes you more available to answer bigger questions about why, because the why is because I chose so. That at the end of the day, that's it. Because I chose so. You are welcome to drop off the spiritual edge of the earth and go into a spinning downward spiral of life is pointless. You're welcome to do that. But what a waste, right? But the only thing that's going to bring you back is the decision to come back. Is the decision that, oh, I get it. I'm swinging between the highest and the lowest. But I don't have to stay at the lowest. There's nobody saying, nope, go down there and stay there. Like, you're not allowed to flip it to the light side. No, you get to choose. You're aware of both because you're awake. That's a good thing. You've awakened yourself. And now you're aware of the ultimate meaning and the ultimate lack of meaning. Well done. Bravo. You're there. Right? But now it's your job to choose to keep expanding on the light side. And to know that means that you're going to open yourself to a lot of deep questions, about meaning, a lot of deep questions about what's the point. But the answer to all of those questions is because I choose to. That's it. It's not because it has to be. It's not because that's the only answer. It's not because love is all there is. It's because I choose to. Because it feels better, probably. Because it gives you something to hold on to at night instead of the downward spiral of existentialism, right? Like, why am I here? Like, that's just it. I choose to. If the darkness is there, the light's got to be there, and I'm going to focus on that side because that's where I can help. You help by expanding. You help by going to the next door, opening it, and thereby taking everyone with you. Because when you uplift, when you feel a slight tiny bit more joy, we all do. Because you've created the space for more joy in the world. That joy is in relief to pain. We get that. But we don't have to be down here focusing on it. And it's not an up and down. You know what I mean? It's not linear. But we don't have to wallow down here as if that will help, because I kid you not, it will not help. You being broke, you being confused, you being miserable does not help anyone. You expanding to a new level of joy, that helps people. You all of a sudden realizing that you can make money in this new way, that helps people. You know, like, think about the difference it makes when somebody cuts you off in traffic versus the difference when 3 people smile at you. It makes a difference. And that's like a tangible thing, but the way that you're being in the world makes a difference. So we've gotta own this gift. You know, so if you're on the depressive side, just remember that, like, yeah, okay, it's part of your what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's part of your carry-on baggage, right? Like, as you expand your awareness, it's part of the deal that you're going to see the pain. It's part of the deal that you see the nothingness from which all things have created. But it's like there's a pause after you exhale, before you inhale. But just because there's a pause doesn't mean that you're like, oh my God, I should never inhale again. No, it's just the space. It's the space. It's the space from which the inhale arises that allows all life to be there, to be beautiful, to be created, to be honored. And that's the same thing that's happening is the darkness. The darkness in the sky allows us to see the stars. The shadow of the world allows us, the potential nothingness and meaningless of the world allows us to create and really cherish the sensation of meaning. So it doesn't mean that everything's meaningless. It means that we get to choose to honor the sensation of meaning. And just like feeling your own sense of perhaps I'm worthless, perhaps none of this really matters, that just allows you to choose I'm worthwhile and I really matter. And that's the work. That's where you get to go. And if you're in that space, then this is your job. It is your sacred job, your duty, your dharma, to choose that. I don't care if it hurts. I really don't. In fact, it's gotta hurt. It's gotta hurt. We've gotta see the shadow in order to be in the light. Let me just make sure I covered everything because I don't want this to go on too long. Yeah, so that guilt feeling of like, who am I? Who am I to expand? Who am I to keep going? Who you are is the person who's facing that question right now. You're not facing questions of hunger on the street. You're not facing questions of homelessness. You're not facing questions of civil war and having to leave your home and walk across the country. You are not in that place. That does not make you bad or guilty. It makes you at a different place. And at that place, you have a different dharma. You have a different human role to play. And play it. Play it. Who are you to hold back on everyone else? And I really mean this. I'm sorry I'm getting all preachy, but like, who are you to hold back? You're in the place you're in. Not because you're better, not because you're worse, not for any other reason than you're there. So do the job. Do the job. If you're in the space of expansion, expand. If you're in the space of bringing consciousness into the planet, then freaking do it. You know? This is a pep talk for myself too, by the way. But that's the place you're in. And you owe it to me. We'll just make it personal. You owe it to me to do that, but you owe it to yourself. But we can drop the guilt. We can drop the guilt around it. We can drop the worry around it. We can drop that sort of depressive quality around it. And really understand that this is so much bigger. This is so much bigger than just how you feel about it. And if you do feel about it, recognize that those feelings are part of the journey, right? Because everything's in relief. I personally believe that everything is one, but I'm a tantric yogi, and by that I mean tantric is about physical experience. And so in tantric yoga, we believe that everything is one, but the duality is the way we understand the world and get an experience of it, and that lessons are really beautifully learned when they're experiential, right? So like, go off and live your life. You don't have to sit and just meditate and realize oneness. No, go experience joy and sadness and light and dark and good and bad and sickness and health. Like, go experience the duality, because in the duality there is truth. That sickness and health are the same continuum. And we have attachments, we have awareness, we want to be one way but not the other way, but they're the same thing, and that's what we're talking about here. That worthiness and worthlessness are the same thing. That ultimate meaning and meaningless are the same thing. And so we're swinging through this continuum, but it's the same truth. And the truth points back to you, and you get to choose. You get to choose the eyes through which you are aware, right? The eyes through which you look at the world. And you can awaken your eyes to see more and more truth, and you can see that oneness and still choose where you're going to flow your focus. And that's really what we're getting at here, right? You still get to choose. So the answer to all of these depressive questions about is it worth it and why am I here and what's the point and I don't even know why I struggle with this is because you can. And more importantly, because if that's the doorway you're at, then that's the doorway you've got to enter for all of us, for life itself to keep going. Is you've got to walk through the door in front of you on a deep spiritual level. Yeah, this is your work. This is your dharma. To keep expanding your consciousness and through that expanding the consciousness of everyone. And that's how you uplift the world. Maybe you'll make $1 million and give it back, though that wouldn't buy much nowadays. Maybe you'll make a couple $1 billion and give it back. Who knows? That's going to help too. But just the expanding of your awareness, just that sort of, if you could see it as ripples, if your ripples calm, then it's like, whoo, this beautiful wave going out into the world. Your work is you. And allowing yourself to continue to open and expand your physical and metaphorical sight is your work. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps, particularly if you swing between those two things. It's the same thing and you get to choose. And if you have any personal questions on this, reach out to me. I know this is a charged topic. And when we're in the abyss side of it, it's really dark. And I've been there, I go there. You know, I don't know how you feel, but I know how it is when I'm there. And I'm willing to have that conversation. So feel free to reach out to me. And I hope this helps. Mwah.